What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. So before I get into this video, I want to give a big shout out to the brother Brendan Olson for the donation to the channel via the Cash App. Much respect to him for showing love, once again, to Too Raw for TV, also known as Too Raw for Sports, also Too Raw Media now. So this is something that I think is going to rile up a lot of LeBron fans. But when you really think about it, you can make an excellent case that Tim Duncan should be ranked greater than LeBron James. Now, I know that sounds blasphemous and, oh, you're just a LeBron hater. Well, no, I think what it really is that Tim Duncan is perhaps, along with Moses Malone, one of the two most underrated players in the history of the NBA. Perhaps Tim Duncan is the most underrated and most underappreciated player in the history of the NBA. Tim Duncan has accomplished many intangible things that LeBron has never done. For starters, Tim Duncan came into the NBA with the Spurs with an instant championship impact. His rookie year, I think they won something like 57, 58 games, it might have been, or 56, 57, somewhere in that vicinity. But they were already instantly, his rookie year, one of the better teams in the NBA. When LeBron James came into the NBA, now granted, he didn't have the team around him that Tim Duncan had, but they were still a bad team. You know, they were still a bad team. And there have been years subsequently when LeBron has had teams with just as much top-heavy talent or even more so, and they have underperformed. Tim Duncan surpassed David Robinson as the best player on the Spurs by his second year. And of course, that's the year that they won a championship. By LeBron James' second year, they still had not, the Cavaliers had still not made a postseason appearance. Tim Duncan was the one responsible for taking the Spurs over the hump, and he never looked back. He was All-NBA first team his rookie season. He won a championship and a Finals MVP in his second season. He made the Spurs a serious championship contender and possible dynasty for 2 entire decades. LeBron Ramon James did not have that type of impact with the Cleveland Cavaliers. I mean, look, even the most steadfast LeBron fans say, what? He dragged a bunch of bums to the finals. He dragged a bunch of bums to the finals, but many of those years, they underperformed. Largely because of LeBron James not coming through down the clutch. Now, you could say that Tim Duncan had loaded teams, but Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, you know, great players, not top 50. Matter of fact, are they top 75? I don't know if Tony Parker's top 75. Is Ginobili top 75? I don't know. I've forgotten that list. You know, and if they are, they're pretty low on the list. There were more talented teams in many ways, especially if you look at the starting roster than the Spurs. But the Spurs played in different eras and were successful in different eras. The Spurs were successful in the slower paced, defensive orientated NBA in the late 90s and early 2000s. And then Tim Duncan, you know, realizing the game had changed, lost a lot of weight so he could handle the rigors of a faster paced league, a more up-tempo NBA. They won another championship in 2007. And then another one, an even faster paced NBA, his final championship in 2014. So Tim Duncan was able to adjust and still be dominant. As soon as Tim Duncan retired, the Spurs have never been the same. Even Bill Russell cannot match the duration of championship longevity or championship potential that Tim Duncan had. That's the most we've ever seen from one player. He never once missed the playoffs, Tim Duncan. Not once. LeBron Ramon James have missed the playoffs quite a few times. The Spurs won at least 50 games in each full season that they played. And in the years where there were strikes, they won the percentage equivalency of more than 50 games had it been an 82-game season. So every year that Tim Duncan played there, they were dominant. That's not the case for LeBron Ramon James. Two of LeBron's prior 5 years with the Lakers, they've had a losing record. And going into his sixth season so far, they have a losing record. They underperformed with the Cavaliers. He's underperformed, I should say, with the Cavaliers from 2015 to 2018. Even though they went to the finals, they should have been better. As a matter of fact, you can make an argument that as weak as the Eastern Conference was, the Cavaliers should have been the team that won 65, 70 games and not the Warriors. Why did they underperform? To me, lack of discipline, lack of leadership, no practice. That's what happens when you're in a conference that is extraordinarily weak, the weakest East Conference that we had seen since the 1950s, with only one team really having a serious shot at winning a title. Tim Duncan, if you look at both of their careers together, Tim Duncan is the far better defender, shot blocker, and rebounder than LeBron James. He had arguably a better mid-range game, at least for the duration of his career, than LeBron James. He's a much better leader than LeBron James. He isn't selfish. He doesn't try to take all the credit from his teammates. Tim Duncan needs to take pay cuts to help the San Antonio Spurs be able to get talent so that the dynasty could extend itself. LeBron will never do that. LeBron is always about I, and me. Tim Duncan never tried to get his coaches fired. Could you imagine LeBron James playing for Greg Popovich? It would have never worked. He would try to get Greg Popovich fired within a season. Because he's not going to share the basketball. You notice all the selfish players hate playing with Pop. DeJounte Murray, another self-centered, ISO-heavy guy who doesn't like to share the wealth. He didn't like playing with Pop. LeBron has fewer championships than Tim Duncan. Tim has 5. LeBron has 4. He has a winning finals record against LeBron James. He has played with overall less talent than LeBron James, but always managed to be on a dominant team. His only top 75 help, now that I did a little bit more reading about it, was indeed David Robinson. And by the time he played with David Robinson, Robinson was not the same player that he had been from his 89 to 96 prime. That David Robinson was not a top 75 player. And he hooked up with Kawhi Leonard, of course, before Kawhi Leonard's prime. Could you imagine if he played with Kawhi Leonard in his prime years, from 17 to 20 or 21, that version of Kawhi Leonard? Tim Duncan's help was all drafted and not traded for, nor did he ever lead the Spurs to go form a super team. His only other Hall of Fame help from those two, other than those two, Kawhi Leonard and Dave Robinson, were Mon Ginobili and Tony Parker, both extremely late draft picks. LeBron has played with the likes of Carmelo Anthony, Russell Westbrook, Anthony Davis, Dwayne Wade, Derrick Rose, Kyrie Irving, Ben Wallace, Shaquille O'Neal, Kevin Love, Isaiah Thomas, Dwight Howard, Rajon Rondo, Ray Allen, Chris Bosh, Carlos Boozer, Brandon Ingram, Antoine Jameson, yet has still managed to miss the playoffs multiple times and has an awful finals record. As a matter of fact, he's still the only player to have lost more than 30 finals games. But yet this man is supposed to be the GOAT. I'm beginning to wonder whether he's even top 5. The truth is, LeBron never could have won a championship with one franchise. He was never a good enough player to be able to win in Cleveland without Kyrie Irving, who wouldn't have been drafted if he had stayed. Hell, LeBron couldn't have even made the finals in Cleveland without Kyrie, except for the year in between Ben Wallace leaving the Pistons and before the forming of the Big Three Boston Celtics. There was literally no actual contender in the East in 2007. On top of that, of course, Duncan is the only player to have 15 times all defensive team selections. He is 10 times All-NBA first team, 15 total All-NBA teams, and has 15 All-Star selections. Imagine how many more he would have had if he had came to the league at 18 years old, like LeBron, instead of 21. Another thing that hurt Tim Duncan when it comes to the media is his personality. Many will tell you that if Tim Duncan hadn't been such a silent person and had a more entertaining personality, or was a narcissist who bragged about himself like LeBron, maybe to a lesser extent MJ, Kobe, Shaq, he would have had much more attention from the media and had been more marketable. This in turn would have gotten him more favorable votes from the media, possibly a third MVP, possibly multiple Defensive Player of the Year awards, more All-NBA and all defensive selections, etc. It also didn't help that he played on a small market team his entire career, on top of him having no personality and what they say, a boring game. His game was boring to watch. But then I challenge you, what's so exciting about LeBron? LeBron has one of the most soporific games and one of the smallest bags that you've ever seen. LeBron is the epitome of what the media can do if they're for you, as far as marketing you as a personality. We know the media generally only cares right now about the Lakers and what team does LeBron play on. Had Tim Duncan played on a larger market team, would have had, of course, a larger, bigger fan base, which would have allowed the public perception to push him higher in the all-time rankings. You can make a strong case that when you look at his achievements, you look at the totals, you look at his impact, that Tim Duncan just may be the 5th or 6th greatest player the game has ever seen. He was great from start to finish, ending his career on a 67-win team, playing good defense and almost averaging a double-double in only 25 minutes a game. As a 40-year-old man, from a total career perspective, considering the help he had in doing it all with a small market team, Duncan rates extremely high in overall peaks, behind only players like Michael Jordan, Kareem, Magic, Bird, and maybe Wilt. One other point that should be made is that LeBron James really didn't have much competition at his position as well, as far as great players. I mean, you can make a case for Paul Pierce, maybe, but Pierce isn't the same player. Paul George, whereas Tim Duncan had to contend with for the entirety of his career, the very end of Charles Barkley's career, Karl Malone, Kevin Garnett, Dirk Nowitzki, Pau Gasol, Chris Webber, Amari Stoudemire, Zach Randolph. A very small peak before injuries came in with a guy like Jermaine O'Neal, Antoine Jameson, Elton Brand, and several others. Matter of fact, you could argue that that period of time was a beacon of big men, especially power forwards and centers, especially power forwards who were really good in the NBA. So that's it. I really think that we got to start giving Tim Duncan his due, man. And you can make a great case to Tim Duncan, career-wise, better than LeBron James. Tell me what you guys think.